Hello, hello, and welcome to another show, Accentuating the Positive with Karen Swain. How are advanced ET beings helping planet Earth? Who are they? And what do they look like? And where are they from? We're going to find out today through a book called The Thiaoouba Prophecy with Shen Chong. Stay tuned for an exciting show.
You got to accentuate the positive. Wow, I feel good. A little bit of feel good goes a long way.
You're listening to Karen Swain, teacher of deliberate creation, accentuating the positive, showing you a way to a better life.
Accentuating the positive, it's not just fad, it's sanity. Who in their right mind would accentuate anything else?
If you feel like that's what you want to do.
It's so great to be with you all again. Welcome to another show, Accentuating the Positive. Boy, what a big couple of days it's been. I've just been chatting with Samuel offline because of like all the Trump news. We might go into a bit of that today, but I'd like to welcome Samuel Chong to the show again. Welcome, Samuel.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for having me again.
Samuel and I have had a few conversations on the show and in the Inner Sanctum with our little online group. And I just love this conversation. One of my favorite guests of all time. He is talking about a book that was written a long time ago. How many years ago? In the late 80s, wasn't it? By a French-Australian man, Michel Desmarquet, who went to another planet. He was abducted, he was taken to another planet, and he was given all this information about Earth, who we are, what we're doing here, what's going to happen. And I have to say, I was telling Samuel that over 20 years ago, people were telling me, have you read this book? Have you read this book? And I was just like, yeah, another book to read. I resisted it until about 3 or 4 years ago, I can't remember, when you contacted me and said, I'd like to come on your show. And I thought at that stage, okay, it's time to read this book. And I couldn't put it down. I just couldn't put it down. It's like one of the best books I've ever read.
Yes.
Let me tell you a little bit about Samuel and what we're going to chat about today. Samuel Shen Chong is a certified court interpreter, Chinese translator, and Galactic Ambassador living in LA, instrumental in arranging for the Chinese publication of the French-born Australian Michel Desmarquet's book, The Thiaoouba Prophecy, which came out in the early 90s. The book describes Michel's visit to another highly advanced planet and civilization, sharing many truths about life on other planets, the universe, creation of life on planet Earth. It actually goes into so much. I reckon it's compulsory reading if you're really into this stuff. And I've got a quote here from, actually, Samuel does a lot more than court interpreting. We were just chatting about him doing more studies. But you say here, perhaps the most important theme of the book speaks to the purpose of life. Man's exists physically for the sole purpose of developing spiritually. There are many documented cases of past life regressions through hypnosis which have yielded this same message. Furthermore, the book tells us that material technology without spiritual knowledge is leading us to a global catastrophe on Earth. Therefore, our technology should assist in the spiritual development and not be used, as it is now, to confine and enslave people with a monetary system and a materialistic world, which are both temporary anyway. And do you want to tell people what you've been studying?
Oh, I just got my law degree, Juris Doctorate degree, and from university, and I'm going to be taking the bar exam, and hopefully I'll pass. And I'm going to spread the messages to a different group of people, a different group of audience that still rely on the mainstream media. So I'm going to expand my my scope of speaking engagements,
which is fantastic. So I was just giving Samuel a bit of a psychic reading before we went live. Whether he believed me or not, I don't know. But I had Michel coming through. I'd never had Michel coming through before, but I was listening to an interview with Michel. And I was criticizing him in my mind the other day because he has this really thick French accent, even though He was born in France, but he lived in Cairns, Australia. He moved out here. I don't know how old he was when he moved to Australia. How old was he when he moved to Australia? He was an adult.
Yeah,
don't
he was
know.
an adult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And got married, and he lived up near Cairns, which is in northern eastern Australia, very hot. And he grew plants, didn't he? He had a nursery.
Yes,
Right?
he did.
But he still had a really thick French accent, and he had this sort of interesting personality. So when I was listening to him in an interview the other day, I was sort of criticizing him. It's like what he says is amazing, but he's got this thick accent, which is hard to listen to, and he's got this sort of funky, like personality, which also makes the message a little hard to listen to. So when he came through this morning, he came through in that thick accent and that same personality, and he was laughing at me for criticizing instead of coming through really clearly. But the message was from the guides that they were so honoring Samuel for all the work that you've been doing to spread this message and to tell people about the book so that the knowledge in this book can help humanity evolve spiritually.
I'll be doing a lot more in the future.
Because, the story of the book, we'll get into some of the messages, and we're going to get into other things today because Samuel has also interpreted another book, which I don't think I'll be reading. It sounds like hard reading. But you obviously interpreted it because you thought it was an important book. What's it called? 334 Lies, which goes into what has been deemed conspiracy theories. But we'll talk a little bit about that too. But Michel, when he had this experience in the 80s and then was given the task to write down his experience and to share it with humanity, found it very difficult to do that. And there was another Australian guy, what was his name, that used to put on events for Michel?
Tom Chaco and Michael Meanwell.
Mm-hmm. And they put on some, but it was small. It was very small back in the 90s, and it was before the internet was big. And he had a lot of ridicule. And he gave up, basically. And his wife divorced him. Everyone, like, you're mad, you're crazy. He held tight to his story, and everyone said he was mad and crazy. And his wife divorced him, and he moved to Vietnam, and he became very reclusive until Samuel found him. Do you want to share that story with people about how you found him?
Yeah, so I was looking online, searching for a book written by ET contactees, because in my mind, I thought that if the ETs could come and visit us, they must have advanced technology, advanced knowledge. We can just learn from them. So I was purposely and intentionally looking for books written by ET contactees, hoping to find information that can advance our society, our civilization. So I searched on Amazon back in 2014 and found this book. Back then, it was titled Abduction to the Next Planet. And I checked it out, and I couldn't put the book down, especially when it's talking about who is Christ, especially the stories about the Bible. And I believed everything written in the book is true because everything can be verified. And I did a lot of research and found out that a lot of the details in the book are actually very, very interesting and can be verified by additional research. So I read when I read the postscript of the book, it says there are more incredible things that we are far from understanding, and that the author, Michel Desmarquet, wasn't allowed to put in the book because it's so kind of important, but we don't understand. So that actually caused me a lot of curiosity. I was extremely curious. I thought I would be able to understand it. Why don't I just find the author, Michel Desmarquet, and ask him in person? So this is when I did a search on the internet to find out where he was at that time, if he was still alive. And then I found out that he was residing in Vietnam, like on Southern Island. I didn't know exact address. So I grabbed a photo that I found on the internet and I printed it out, and I kept it with me, and I flew to that island, which is a Phu Quoc Island in Vietnam, and I showed the photo to the local taxi driver and asked him to take me to where the picture shows, which is the bungalow in which Michel Desmarquet was living at. And then at the second try, the taxi driver found that bungalow, and then it turned out that Michel Desmarquet was having an afternoon nap, and I waited and until he woke up, and then he came and we met, and then we had an encounter, very interesting encounter and conversation, in which I was hoping that he could reveal what he knew but didn't write in the book. But he was not very friendly in the very beginning, having a very, very kind of annoyed feeling at all the people who went purposely looking for him.
Yeah.
Very, very.
Yes, he used to shoo people away because he'd had so much ridicule that he was just over it. He'd sort of thrown up his hands and said, nope. He was given the mission and he did his best, and then he was like over it. And so a lot of people attempted to contact him, and he would shoo them away. But there were a couple of other people that did manage to contact him and have photographs with him. But he did let you in. Did he say why he chose you? Did he say why he chose you?
Well, in the first meeting I had with him, I spent about 4 days with him. He really kept his mouth closed. He didn't tell me anything. But before I was about to depart, he showed me a contract that he signed with a Chinese publisher. And he wanted me to follow up with the publisher because they paid him $2,000 to get a book published. But he never heard from them again. So I took on the task, hoping that I can become Michel Desmarquet's friend by doing him a favor. And then it turned out that the publisher was afraid of having the book published for the fear of censorship in China. And I sent a message back to Michel, and he told me to find a different publisher. And I did. I did find a different publisher and got the book published. And this is when he invited me for the second time, in which he revealed to me what he didn't write in the book. But I think he said to me during the first meeting I had with him was that he knew I was coming because Tao, the ET that lived on Thiaoouba, told him that someone was going to look for him, and but he thought that that person was me.
Oh, beautiful. Shirley says here, congratulations, Samuel. I'm thinking you were sort of talking about something that Samuel said before. But yeah, so we've got a new audience that I'm sure haven't read the book. So let's go into the story of the book. We've established that Michel was a grumpy old man that didn't want to talk about it anymore, but he did open up to you in many ways, and you were instrumental in getting the book into China. What's the reception been about the book? Because it's quite an extraordinary book. It's not sort of for mainstream reading. What has been the reception in China?
Yeah, the reception has been really kind of mixed. A lot of people believe in the content of the book because it really connects all the dots of the paranormal, like explains what ghosts are and who built the Great Pyramid of Egypt, for what purposes, if there's a life after death, and if there's reincarnation. It also explains the missing people who hiked in the national parks in the US and Canada and Australia, like the missing 411 phenomena. It also explains a lot of the stories in the Bible, the problems that we are facing nowadays, the real dangers on Earth, the human energy field. The real dangers on Earth include money, politicians, journalists, and drugs, and religions. So a lot of people in China resonate to the message. But there are still some people who just treat the book as a science fiction.
And didn't you also say that the media is like one of the problems on Earth?
Yes.
Along with money and drugs and politicians, that the media was like one of the big, because that was the reason I started the show, over 15 years ago, when I realized how the media, our mainstream media or media in general, any media, is so hypnotic, and how it can convince you of something that maybe you wouldn't believe, but it can be convincing. And I think a lot of people are listening to stories and untruths through the media and believing stuff that isn't necessarily what their heart would tell them.
Exactly. And this is actually one of the biggest problems in China, because the reporters or journalists are restricted in what they can report. And also people are kind of like limited to what the media says, and a lot of people cannot do research online by browsing websites outside of China, because there's a Great Wall of China that prevents people from going onto different websites outside of China. So that's a big problem in China right now. But in the US, we have a different problem, is that the mainstream media kind of like limited what people can believe in. And so there are different issues, but they all revolve around media.
Yeah. Well, with so much of our media, and not just news and current affair, but movies and a lot of things that people, it's so divisive. It puts us into this fight, flight. We're always fighting. Like Hollywood movies is full of people killing people. Like it's all about fighting people and running and the enemy. And it just sort of smothers us in this fear-based, divisive message. Yeah, which is the reason that I've started this show. And I'm really happy to say that there are many shows out there like mine flooding the internet now with interviewing people, teachers and contactees and near-death experiences who bring a message of love and unity and love and unity and love and unity. But let's go into what's in the book, because it's not just about him going to a planet and checking out a planet. There's just so much more to the book. Where do you want to start, Samuel?
I want to start by the time sequence when he was lifted up. When he woke up in the middle of the night back in 1987, he wrote a note to his wife indicating that he would be gone for 10 days and not to worry about him. So he walked outside of his house to his yard, and then he was lifted up to the middle of the air, where he saw a beautiful, gigantic, tall, blonde ET, very beautiful looking ET, and saying to him that he will be going on a journey with her. It's a female, apparent to him to be like a female ET. But then later on, he learned that she is a hermaphrodite, meaning that she has both male and female sexual organs. In the very beginning, before they went into the spaceship, they stopped in what he would call a parallel universe, where he saw a lot of people wearing medieval clothes. And then he was told that in this kind of like a parallel universe, time stops, and people near the portals of the parallel universe get sucked into it. So this is why a lot of people, like you see a lot of people who just vanish out of thin air, like people who hike in the national parks, like as documented by David Paulides. And also this also explains why a lot of planes and ships just vanish in the Bermuda Triangle area. This is just a natural phenomenon that can be explained. And Michel Desmarquet actually saw and went inside of the parallel universe. And he was told that people just, if they don't know how to get out, they're stuck there forever, and they don't feel any pain, and they don't die because time just stops there. And then they used the parallel universe as a hiding place, so that the neighbors of Michel Desmarquet wouldn't be able to see the UFOs or ETs and or him being taken away. So they used that as a hiding place. And then they went on their journey, and he was cleansed, or disinfected using yellow light and blue light. And there's a very interesting detail here. It turns out that the yellow light and blue light do have antibacterial, antiviral effects, as proven by Harvard Medical School. They have a paper that documented the wavelength and actually the effects of blue light on bacteria and viruses. So that's actually proven by modern science. Same thing with yellow light, proven by a Chinese scientist. So he was disinfected, and they went on their journey, and they stopped on different planet and just saw the aftermath of a nuclear war. And then he was explained about the like where we all came from, like the blacks, the yellows, the Caucasians, the Polynesians, and Jewish people. It turns out that we all came from different planets originally. We didn't evolve from apes, because when God created us, they made human beings very special by kind of giving each one of us a spark of God the creator of the universe. So we are part of God, and God is part of us. So we are different from animals and plants or different things. So we kind of send feedback of our experiences to the creator or the great ether. Because God, the creator of the universe, wants to have a physical experience through us. So we are connected to the creator by having this kind of experience on earth, so that we can send back the positive experiences to God, the creator. And we evolve gradually by learning different spiritual lessons. So this is actually the meaning of life. And of course, there's reincarnation, there's life after death, and a lot of researchers have proven that through past life regression, and also through studies on people who claim to have reincarnations. And Michel Desmarquet actually experienced this, and he was shown his past lives and by the Thiaoubans, and he had a very, very interesting detail of what he was shown. And also the book is really revealing of what really happened in the past, about 1.35 million years ago, when the blacks and the yellows first came to Earth. The blacks landed in what's now today's Australia, and the yellows landed in what's now today's southern Myanmar. And then the blacks kind of evolved, and a separate group went to Africa, and they became like a separatist from the blacks of Australia, who became the aboriginals nowadays. And then there was like a great reset, because an asteroid hit Earth and split into three parts about 1.23 million years ago. The first part hit was now today's Red Sea area, and the second part hits what now today's East Timor area, and the third part hit was now today's Galapagos Islands. So it explains
Hang on,
a lot.
what was I missed the first. The first part hit which area was it?
Today's Red Sea area.
Oh, Red Sea. Oh, Red Sea.
Yeah,
okay,
Red
yep, go on.
So it explains a lot of the geological phenomena or appearances of Earth today, like the Red Sea. There's a sea because of the aftermath of the struck, and so is the East Timor, and so is the Galapagos Island. So that's what happened, and then a huge flood and turmoil occurred on Earth. So the blacks and yellows lost their technologies and knowledge, and they became like cannibals, like savages. And so that's the first great reset. So this is why we don't have the technologies from the ancient past, because of the natural disaster.
Yeah. I think there's been a few resets on Earth
Yes.
over the millions of years where humanity has evolved to a more conscious society, and then there's been a reset, an asteroid or whatever, or they talk about the floods of Atlantis and Lemuria, and then start again. And we're kind of at that precipice again, where we're evolving to a state where, as I said in your bio, we've reached this technological age, but our consciousness hasn't caught up. And unless it does, we're just going to kill each other. We're just going to blow up ourselves, aren't we? Unless we start to embrace unity and love and connection and our spiritual evolution, not just always on our iPhones. So I've had you on the show a few times, and I always forget to talk about, I think in the first show we didn't mention that the Thiaoubans, who were like 9 foot tall, were they 9 foot tall?
Yes.
Beautiful women-looking beings, were hermaphrodites, which fascinates me. They had evolved their physical body to be both female and male. Did Michel ever talk to you about how they relate to each other? Like, I'm sure that they don't do marriage and stuff like we do on Earth. Like, what did he ever speak about that? Or I don't remember reading it in the book.
Yes, I mean, he says that they can have birth at their will, so they can have their babies born, and they can interact with each other just by telepathy, and they can download information from each other so that they don't have to learn on their own. So, for example, if Tao, Tao, the host of Michel Desmarquet, has a lot of information or knowledge about Earth, a different Thiaoouba can just download information from her and to get the same kind of information just at the instant second, just like an instant transfer of information. And they don't age at all. They are forever looking young at in their 30s, and they can regenerate their body cells or tissues, and they don't have diseases or illness, and they can perform all the miracles that performed by Jesus Christ. They can materialize objects, like just make things out of nothing, and they can heal different diseases. They can also perform a lot of what we would see like supernatural abilities, like levitation. And they can project images into Michel Desmarquet's mind. And they can do all the things that we can possibly think of, because they're the masters of nature. So they can use all the law of nature to perform what we see to be miracles. And actually, a lot of Qigong masters can do certain things to a certain extent, but not as much as what they can do, because they have the knowledge. So this is what they presented to Michel Desmarquet. They have been heavily involved in our ancient history in the past. They were responsible for the destructions of the two cities, Sodom and Gomorrah. They were responsible for sending Moses to us, leading the Hebrews out of Egypt. They were responsible for parting the Sea of Reeds, not the Red Sea, but the Sea of Reeds, and so that Moses can help the Hebrews to cross the sea. And they wandered in the desert for about 4 years or so, not 40 years, as Michel Desmarquet was told by the Thiaoubans. And they were responsible for sending Jesus to us and having Christ to really be resurrected on the cross. So they were responsible for a lot of different things that happened on Earth, all for the purpose of having us to pay the importance of spiritual development.
Yeah. So I was saying to Samuel before that I had asked the questions because I had read the book. As I said before, someone had told me about the book over 20 years ago, and I thought, oh yeah, another book to read. And when Samuel reached out to me, I decided to read the book. Well, no, better late than never, 20 years later. And it blew my mind. But we'll get into the Jesus. I'm just looking at the time. I have to remind people, we'll get into the Jesus story soon. But you're listening to Accentuate the Positive Media with Karen Swain on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Public Radio Network on 107.7 and 105.3 FM, streaming out of New Orleans and all across the internet. I think we're talking to about 250,000 live listeners, which is fabulous. I want to say hi to you all listening on radio, and reach out if you want to contact any of my guests. Reach out to me through my website, karenswain.com. You can send me a message and let me know what you think about the shows. But yeah, back to what I was saying. Where was I? The Thiaoubans. So yeah, got that chain of thought back. I had thought, if they were so instrumental in the history of humanity and what went on Earth, why haven't we heard the Thiaoubans been spoken about by other people? And they had said to me, well, a lot of people have spoken about us in your past and now, psychics and stuff. But you have called us Palladians. Many of you have called us Palladians. And as you said, that the first people here on Earth were the black people and the yellow people. And the black people were in what is now the continent of Australia. And the original people of Australia, I don't call them the Aboriginal, but the original people of Australia, speak about how the Palladians seeded life on Earth. But they called them the Palladians. They're very in contact with the Pallades. And as I'm sitting here listening to you, I'm chatting to the mob, and I'm saying, so were they Palladians or the Thiaoubans? And they're saying to me that the Thiaoubans were also overseeing the Palladians, who were a part of the evolution of this planet. So there's many beings across the cosmos that have been a part of the history of planet Earth and indeed the now and the future. What's the question I have for you? What did Michel say about our future? Did they sort of tell him anything about what's going to happen on planet Earth?
Well, the future really depends on our actions, because even the Thiaoubans, so highly advanced ET beings, they can not foresee what's going to happen 100 years afterwards. So they can only predict what's going to happen within 100 years or so. So they do believe that we can determine our future by our collective unconsciousness. And they are giving us a hand by having Michel Desmarquet to write this book, just to alert us, to give us warnings that we need to change the directions where we're going right now. If we don't change, we're going to be heading a catastrophe. But we can change for the better.
Yeah. And there's like, I've, as I said before, I've been doing this for a long time. There's so many people on the planet that are here as part of that mission, really, as part of the shift in human consciousness. So many spiritual teachers and people that have been abducted and people who had near-death experience. It's unbelievable how much knowledge is being imparted to humanity through people like you, Samuel, and other people I've had, and me, and all of you that are watching. You're tuning into this information and contemplating it makes a huge difference in the shift of the collective consciousness, because as you hold this understanding and as you live this wisdom, you're actually changing the collective consciousness of humanity, right, Samuel?
Yes. So this is why I've been trying so hard to spread the messages so that more people can wake up and we can act together, concertedly, to just to rise up against tyrannies in the world, because we do see a lot of things that are happening, and we do want to change for the better. It requires our actions.
So they called it, the book was originally called Abduction to the Ninth Planet, because the level of consciousness on the Thiaoouba planet, which is this sort of like utopian world where people have all these telepathic abilities, and oh my God, you've got to read the book, it's unbelievable, was a ninth category planet. Now, this is different to what you hear in the conscious community or spiritual community, people talking about dimensions. This is a category of planet across the universe, still in a physical universe. So it's still in like a fourth dimensional state, but it's a ninth category planet. Did Michel ever speak to you about the different categories of planets? Like we are Earth, we're on a one category, but we're one. Yeah, sorry, go on.
Yes. We are living on category 1 planet, the lowest category in the universe. There are a total of 9 different categories of planets in the universe, and the Thiaoubans or Geovans, they live on category 9 planet, the highest category. So which means that we are just like elementary school students learning the basics, and they are just like college professors guiding us, giving us principles in life so we can follow their kind of mentorship. And there are different categories, such as the 3rd category, in which the original Hebrews came from. And also Michel Desmarquet personally lived on category 7 planet, the highest category that he lived on, which he told me personally. So, but he was downgraded to Earth because he made a mistake. According to some people, he made a mistake, so he came back. And so it's we can go up and we can go down. It really depends how we act in our lifetime.
Well, okay, so you're saying in a past life he had lived on a category 7 planet.
Yes.
But it's interesting when you say downgraded. So the most dense planet, like the lowest category planet, for a soul is the hardest to navigate, and therefore it's the most challenging. It's sort of like doing, like a university grade school, because it's so challenging, because we're given so much density to play with, like we're given all these negative thoughts and emotions that we need to navigate. So I don't know if we're downgraded to a category. It's almost like we're challenged to overcome that by going into a denser category, a denser planet. Don't you think, Samuel?
Exactly, I agree. Yes, so we can live to about 100 years old or 120 or so, but people on Thiaoouba, they can live forever. And remember, in the Old Testaments of the Bible, the original Hebrews, they lived to like 800 years old or 900 years old. That probably explains why they were able to live such a long time, because they originally came from a different category of planet. So the
Yeah.
higher category of planet you live on, the more favorable environment that you have. So that people who live on category 7, 8, or 9 planet, they just don't die at all. They just live forever.
Well, I guess they've got a choice of dying
Yeah,
or
they have
not.
a choice. Yes.
Yeah, because you can, like, if you're over it, like, you want to do something else. Like, okay, I'm out of here now. I'm going somewhere else. Like, I don't know. I don't know if I'd want to live forever on one planet. I just think there's too much to. It's like traveling the world. There's too many countries to visit and experience. It's like traveling the cosmos. There's so many planets and experiences to have. Why would you stay on one forever and ever? But yeah, so he was on a 7th category planet, and with the Hebrews from Hebra, they came from a different planet too. This is something I found really interesting too. Do you want to talk about, how the Hebrews came to Earth?
Yes, so they came to Earth by accident. So there was a malfunctioning of their spacecraft as they were traveling and passing by Earth. And then a spacecraft kind of landed on, or kind of crashed on what's now to the southern Russia area. And then 3 people survived after a while, and they became just the original ancestors of the Hebrew people, and they moved south to what's now today's Israel. And so they developed their own kind of civilization over there. And according to Michel Desmarquet, they came from, again, category 3 planet. So they have a unique culture, and they didn't really mix with the people on Earth because of their own uniqueness. And also, by universal law, they are actually living on a different category, which they're not supposed to, but they did by accident. Michel Desmarquet asked the Thiaoubans, why don't you just take them back to their original planet? And he received the answer saying that the Thiaoubans thought that the Hebrews would intermarry people on Earth so that their unique characters would disappear over time. But they didn't really think that they would kept their blood like they didn't intermarry with each other with the outside of Hebrews, so they kept their blood pure. So this is actually they kind of misprojected what's going to happen in the future. So this is when they told Michel Desmarquet they could only see about 100 years ahead, not more than 100 years ahead of us. So this is the explanation given to Michel.
I found that fascinating because there's a large, Hebrew population in where I live, and they have intermixed. Obviously, there's a lot of people, Jewish people, Hebrew people that have married non-Jewish people, but there's still a very strong thought form amongst the Jewish people that they would only marry each other and breed with each other. It's still very strong today, although it hasn't, they haven't completely done that over the years, because we're talking about 20,000 years ago, aren't we, that they came to Earth, they crashed on Earth?
12,000 years ago.
12 or 20? 12.
12,000 years ago.
Oh, yeah. 12,000, which was around the time that Atlantis, I don't know.
After Atlantis disappeared.
After Atlantis. Interesting. Yes. Yeah, fascinating. And also something else that was quite fascinating was that Moses wasn't... I made it. What does Rose say here?
Moses wasn't a Hebrew. He was originally like an Egyptian.
He was an Egyptian. But so where was it? Because he was another extraordinary being that came to Earth to help enlighten humanity. But what category planets had he been hanging out on?
His spiritual body originally came from a category 8 planet. Okay. And he was born into an Egyptian family. The name Moses is actually not a Hebrew name. It's originally an Egyptian name. Then people can do a lot of research on this and find validity. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, fascinating. So he came to actually help the Hebrew people because they were being so persecuted, right? So the Thiaoubans sort of said, okay, let's get this guy down on Earth and he can sort of help them out a bit. Yeah, which is fascinating. It's fascinating to know the history of Earth, because I think it really dovetails with who we are as a humanity right now and where we're going. You know, it's all to know our history. And so another person that they sent to Earth to help humanity was Jesus. You know, he became a rock star, didn't he? Do you want to speak about, let's go into the Jesus story. And I just want to remind people that you're listening to Accentuate the Positive. My guest today is Michel Chong. We're talking about the Thiaoouba Prophecy on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Public Radio Network on 107.7 and 105.3 FM. So Jesus, who was Jesus and what was going on there?
So back about 2,000 years ago, when the Romans were ruling the Middle East, they were doing a lot of things unspiritual, not very spiritual. So the Thiaoubans decided to give a hand, just like when they gave a hand to the ancient Hebrews, because when during Moses' times of Moses, the Egyptians were ruling the Hebrews, preventing the Hebrews to develop their spirituality. So this is why the Jehovahans or Thiaoubans wanted to send Moses to lead the ancient Hebrews out of the evil regimes of the Egyptians. So when they decided to do this to help the people in the Hebrews in the Middle East out, they wanted to send a person who could be believed, and so that people can see that this person can be born miraculously, so that people can pay attention to that person. So this is when they kind of put an implant embryo into the uterus of Virgin Mary, so that that event can catch people's attention. So indeed, the young Jesus was born out of Virgin Mary. But however, when a person is born that way, that person has to pass through what the ancient Nagas would call the river of oblivion, forgetting all the knowledge that the person learned in the past. So the young Jesus, even though he was highly spiritual and highly intelligent, he couldn't perform miracles because he didn't have the knowledge. He had a very in-depth conversation with the teachers of the temple, but he couldn't really perform any of the miracles that performed by Christ later in the later years. That Jesus, during the missing years of Jesus, went to India and went through China and went to Japan. And so this is why there's a tomb of Jesus in Shingo village, Japan, that people can still visit. It's spelled as Shingo village, Japan, that people can look up the tomb of Jesus in Japan. You can find more information. So that Jesus died in Japan having 3 daughters. That's what happened to the Jesus. Christ, on the other hand, is a different being, because in order for people to believe the teachings of Christ, they have to have someone who can perform miracles, because people in the past, like people nowadays, they're highly skeptical. They wouldn't believe someone's preachings unless that person is able to perform like miracles, things that people couldn't do. So they have to send someone of their own. So the Thiaoubans made a body that resembled the body of Jesus, and then having their one of their own people to come into the body, so that that person, Christ, can retain all the knowledge and to perform miracles so that his teachings can be believed. This is actually documented in the Bible. Like there are some traces of information that can confirm this, because when Christ began preaching, when he saw his mother, he didn't call his mother mother, he called his mother woman. I mean, I'm a linguist, I study languages. There's not a language in the world in which people would mix up woman and mother, the 2 words together, because mother has a very special relationship with the child or the son, and it just doesn't make any sense to call someone's mother woman. It shows that that Christ when he saw Jesus' mother, he recognized that the mother of Jesus, but not the mother of Christ. So that's why he called her woman, not mother. And also, you can tell that from the like when Christ began preaching, he just changed like a totally different person, like having all this wisdom and knowledge, spiritual knowledge, to really speak wisely to the people at that time, using parables, using analogies, and he died on the cross just to show people that there's life after death and there's reincarnation. And this book, Thiaoouba Prophecy, specifically named the 4 different council meetings in which the original meanings of the Bible were intentionally distorted, and the concept of reincarnation was removed by one of the 4 Catholic Church council meetings.
Yeah, wow. It's a wild story. I've just screenshotted my webpage that I've got on you, Samuel, because as I said to people before, I've had you on the show a few times, but I've posted, I was thinking, I've got photos of what you're talking about, and where are they? And I thought, I've got them on my webpage, so I'll show people. This is for people listening on radio. Please go to my YouTube channel and or the United Public Radio YouTube channel, UFO Paranormal YouTube channel, to see this. But there's some photos of Michel when he was in Cairns, I think, or is that in Vietnam? Is that Vietnam?
That's in Cairns. That's in Cairns. That's where the originally event took place.
And we haven't spoken about the Doko, which I'm showing photographs. These are illustrated images of the Doko. So you're speaking about the 2 Jesuses. There was Jesus, who was the being that was born to Mary. Obviously, there was a sacred contract between the Thiaoubans and Mary and the family, and for her to have Jesus. And I don't know, I wonder why there were 2 and not 1, like why he... They manufactured a body that was the Christ that came out of the desert that performed the miracles. So he was really only on earth for a few years, and then he was the one crucified. Yeah. And you were saying that the one originally born to Mary was traveled the world teaching, learning and teaching. There's a lot of stories of how he went to India and Tibet, and people say that he was in Europe, and there were sort of stories that have come down through history saying he was here and there and everywhere, which is not in the Bible, or maybe it was in the Bible, it was taken out, who knows. But and so the body that was manufactured by the Thiaoubans that could hold the DNA, that could give him the remembrance of who he is as a maybe a 9th category being, was the one that did all the miracles.
Yes, the reason was that the first Jesus born out of Virgin Mary, he couldn't perform miracles. So that even if he tried to preach, people still wouldn't believe him, because they had to have someone who could perform miracles in order for his preachings to be believed. So this is why they have to have their own to come to earth and to perform all the miracles, so that people can see him as a savior, or maybe like a miraculous person, and to believe his teachings.
Yeah, and so in order to convince Michel of this story that they were telling, there's you and Michel in Vietnam, they took him to, we haven't spoken about the Dokos, which is their dwellings.
Yes.
Their dwellings on the planet. You want to talk about the Doko?
Yes, the dokos are their dwellings, in which they're kind of like a half-egg shaped structure. And from the outside, people cannot see inside, but from the inside, people can see outside. So it's like a one-way mirror, and it's made by a special force field. And Michel Desmarquet lived in one of the dokos, and he enjoyed his stay there. And there is a bed in which is kind of like a mesmerizing bed, in which when he lie in the bed, he would fall into sleep immediately. And then also they ate like kind of different colors of powders, and everything is kind of large size, because they're taller than him, they're larger than him. And also there's no light, because they can see at night as well as daytime, so they don't need lights. So the dokos are really unique, and they can prevent rain from falling inside of the dokos. And actually, Michel, before he came back to Earth, he was actually shown a golden doko, in which there were 134 different bodies of different ETs floating in the golden doko. That shows him that we are not alone in the universe. There are other ETs of different categories that just like us, trying to evolve spiritually, trying to learn the different lessons in our lifetime. They all appear to be different from each other. So we are human beings, and they may look a little bit different. They may have a unicorn, but they're ETs just like us, trying to survive, trying to evolve spiritually.
Yeah, and in this golden doko, it was on its own island, wasn't it? The way that they travel on Thiaoouba, even though they can levitate and they can manifest out of thin air and they can do all these what we would call miracles, they still had a technology, I think it was called the Lashiliak, I don't know if I'm getting the pronunciation right, that was like an energy force field, a bit like the doko was an energy force field. Yes. That was like an anti-gravitic technology that they would put around them so they could fly, kind of like Superman, but they're using this sort of force field, and this is how they got around their planet. I just so cool. It's like, I so want that. I got to wait another 8 category planets before I get that, but I'm just like, I want that. And so they fly around the planet, and they took him to this little island which had the golden doko. And in there, as you say, Samuel, there were all these bodies, but there was also the body of the one they manufactured that was Christ, right?
Yes. He also saw the body of Christ. And there is a very specific detail in which he saw the marks or the injuries of Christ on his rib and also on his wrist, like here, the wrist, not on the palm, because, if they nail him on the palm, his body weight would it wouldn't support his whole body weight. But if they nail him on the wrist, then the body weight would be supported by the arms. So this is another interesting detail. So the book is full of details, including the anti-gravitational technology that they were using to move them around. They say that if you can just use the resonant frequency, you can actually neutralize gravity. And this is something that they're trying to tell us to have it commercialized.
I'd so love that. I hope I'm alive on Earth when that happens. I've been dreaming about that since I was a kid. As a kid, we dream about flying, and some people, jump off roofs and injure themselves. I think that we have memories of either being in our astral form at night when we're flying around the cosmos, or we have memories of being on other planets where we have this technology where we can fly, right?
Yes. Actually, we do. We do have the ability to fly in our astral bodies. And actually, Michel Desmarquet experienced what it was like in his astral body when he was traveling to the past. He actually witnessed back then when the continent of Lemuria sunk into the ocean 14,500 years ago in his astral body. And he actually had a very interesting detail describing what happened back then. And before the catastrophe, people were living there in a very civilized manner, in which there was no money in the continent, and people didn't take advantage of each other. They just grabbed whatever they needed from the marketplace. And also they showed how they used nuclear energy as a source of energy to light their light bulbs, how they were having a huge pyramid that's 3 times as large as the pyramid of Egypt in the north western corner of the continent of Lemuria, and how they behaved back then, having a kind of a very unique concert in which musical instruments were playing and mimicking the sounds of nature. And Michel Desmarquet didn't really want to leave the scene, but he was told he wasn't there to enjoy the life on Lemuria. He was to report back everything he saw, he heard, and what he experienced to the people on Earth. So he was taken back to his physical body.
Yeah, so there was a couple of times where they took him out of his physical body into his astral. One of them was on the ship you were talking about earlier. When he went on the ship in his physical body, they had to cleanse him because, I often think about this because the bacteria on different planets, like we live in this dense sort of, like even I call us fleshy white people. When we go to third world countries like India, or other places where the bacteria is completely different, us fleshy white people that live in this really clean environment get really sick because our bodies can't cope with the environment of these other planets. And so likewise, they needed to cleanse Michel's body so that they could be in his physical presence. And one of the things they did was, do you want to talk about that, what they did to him to cleanse his body, not just with the light energy, but popping him out of the body?
Yes, they gave him two kind of medications. One is a pill which he drank he took with water, with a liquid, which is another form of medicine. And then immediately his astral body went outside of his physical body. They told him that they did that in order to save time, so that his astral body could follow them and to see what they were doing. And they were explaining all the things in the spaceship, and then so that he wouldn't lose time in the short time that he was leaving Earth.
So there he was outside his physical body, flying around the spaceship as they were working on his physical body. Yeah, he was in his astral body flying around the spaceship. So he got to sort of travel in space, both in his astral form and in his physical form, which I found fascinating too. Yeah. It's just amazing. Oh, has anyone? Sorry, go on. What would you want to say?
Yeah, and they say that the pills that they gave him wouldn't harm his body. That's very different from some of the psychedelics that we take on Earth, because the psychedelics are harmful to the astral body. According to the Thiaoubans, they say that the psychedelics take the astral body to a place where the astral body is not supposed to be, and then it kind of damages the electrons of the astral body. So psychedelics are not to be encouraged.
Okay, so you're talking about psychedelics like manufactured psychedelics like LSD, or you're talking about psychedelics like ayahuasca and mushrooms and plant medicine, because there's a distinction of psychedelics. So all psychedelics or just some psychedelics?
According to Michel Desmarquet, anything hallucinogenic, anything that makes people having this kind of hallucinogenic experience.
What does Keith say here, Christian? I have heard the ETs off planet right now because yes, that's what that's what Dolly says, Keith. Dolly says that from Dolly and Preston's show that there's no ETs in our atmosphere right now because the sun is doing crazy things. And I asked my guides about that, Keith. Do you have anything to say about that, Samuel? About the ETs being
they frequently observe us and watch us, and sometimes intervene when necessary. So I'm not really I wouldn't be surprised if the Thiaoubans are living among us, especially nowadays when there are a lot of turmoils and crises going on.
So
like what happened a few days ago.
Yeah, we'll get into that. Well, we'll get into what Michel said to you about Trump. But yeah, what I'm getting as a message from my guides, Keith, is that there are some ETs that their technology can't cope with what the planet is going through at the moment, especially with the solar ejections. But they're kind of laughing, and they're saying the majority of them have the technology to totally override that radiation, and that's not a problem for them. So yeah, Dolly does say that there are no ETs in the atmosphere at the moment. But my guides are telling me that only a few types, because there's so many. I mean, think about the different flavors of humans, right? We talk about the black people and the yellow people and the fleshy white people. There's just so many flavors of humans. That's on one planet. Imagine how many flavors, how many different types of ETs are out there in the cosmos, and at different categories and different consciousnesses. I mean, it blows your mind to think about it. So when we talk about aliens or ETs, we just don't talk about one type. We put it in a category like a there's just millions. Anyway, so the Thiaoubans, they're telling me, my guides are telling me, have the ability to override any radiation, magnetic radiation that's affecting a planet. Yeah, they're masters of manifestation. They understand that this physical universe is all made of light, and so anything, planets, universes, material things, they can change the molecules, which a lot of their craft does when flying around the universe, flying through time and space. Anyway, yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome, Keith. Yeah, but any other questions? I want to go back into, where was I? Anything you want to say about the book, Samuel? I could ask you a million more questions.
Well, I think the book is really a revelation because it really connects the dots of everything paranormal, like what ghosts are. A lot of people say that they can see ghosts. Yes, I believe that because there are ghosts around us. Ghosts are actually part of our astral body. So when we die, our astral body leaves our physical body. And because astral body is actually composed of electrons, 81% of the electrons of the astral body goes to our higher self after 3 days. So this is why Christ resurrected after 3 days. And this is why the Tibetans have a custom not to touch the corpse of the dead for 3 days. So the 3 days is a very interesting period of time. So the 81% of the electrons goes to the astral body goes to the higher self after 3 days, and the other 19% of electrons remain in nature until they're either recycled by nature or when the person reincarnates. So the 18% of electrons have this kind of a force field that kind of get them together to resemble the appearance of the person who just passed away. And because electrons have memories, this is why they frequently haunt the places they loved or hated. So this is why people say they're haunted houses. Yes, they are.
Yes, I've called them in the past thought forms. So it's like a thought becomes a form, and then and you can perceive that form as a ghost or a person, but it's not the fullness of the person. It's just an aspect of that personality that was here on Earth that's left behind, as you say, electrons, that has memories of that person's life. And depending on how that person lived their life, if they were happy or sad, you're going to encounter that if you're a sensitive person. Yeah.
And the book also talks about the importance of auras and chakras, because they kind of influence and determine our physical or physiological body. So this is why I've been researching a lot on the people who can see the different colors of auras, because they can predict not only physical illness, like 3 months before that manifests, but also tell a person's genuineness or if a person is a liar. So if we are able to see the colors of auras, we can easily choose the political candidates.
Yeah, we could choose the political candidates. Well, we're going to get into Trump in a minute. But the auras, because something else that happened to Michel when he was on the planet was that they gave him that ability to see auras like they can see auras, to see the energy field of other beings, which he loved. And then when he came back to Earth, they took it away from him. And he was really upset about that, right? He's like, but I'm asking, because, I read this stuff and I'm full of questions. I'm like, why did they do that? And they said, well, it was not for them. He was given that as part of his experience on the planet, and then to come back having experienced it. So it's when you're given information as opposed to experiencing it, it's very different, right? So he experienced it, but it's up to him or us as humans to develop that. So I'm somebody that helps people develop their psychic abilities. And like him, I can see people's auras and I can read their energy fields and I can sort of see their future and know their energy fields. Probably not quite as well as the Thiaoubans, but that was a development, and it was a spiritual development. It was like getting rid of the negative thinking so that I could drop more into a frequency of love and light and feel more connected to source. And it's a whole spiritual evolution. So they took it away from him so that he would evolve spiritually on his own. which I don't think he was too happy about, right?
He wasn't very happy, but he wasn't really sad either, because they told him that if he were able to see the auras of people on Earth, the colors would mostly look very dull, because people don't normally have bright colors as they have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember once watching Oprah and listening to a man who was in a plane crash. He survived, but he saw a lot of people burning to death, which was pretty traumatic for him. But one thing that he noticed, he was just a businessman, he wasn't into anything spiritual, this changed his life, was as he was watching people burning to death, he saw lights flying off them. And he said some were really bright and some were really dull. And he realized that sort of dullness of light was a part of their consciousness, who they were. And the brighter you are, the more evolved you are, and the duller you are, the less evolved you are. And so he made it a mission for the rest of his life to spread love and light and to have shine his light brightly, because he'd had this experience in a plane crash. And I thought, wow, that's fascinating.
Exactly. Yeah. Because the colors of auras have nothing to do with the wealth that a person has, but right. It has something to do with the kindness, the compassion, and the love that a person gives out. And for example, if we see the auras of Bill Gates, it's probably not going to be very bright. But if you see the color of a loving, compassionate beggar on a street, then his or her aura would be very, very bright and beautiful. So it has nothing to do with the position of a person in the society, or the prestige or the fame that person has. It has something to do with how the person behaves to others.
Yeah. Absolutely. Hallelujah to that. So I just want to remind you all that you're listening to Accentuate the Positive with Karen Swain on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network on 107.7 and 105.3. And my guest today is Samuel Shen Chong, who is now he's going to take the bar exam. You'll be a lawyer or a solicitor, but apart from all those accolades, your academic accolades, what I found talking to you, because I've spoken to you a few times over the years, is that you have a lot of spiritual wisdom and knowledge, and you're very well informed about many things, not just this book, about many things. I've had discussions with you about China because of my curious mind. I've quizzed you about what's happening in China and all sorts of things politically. But let's get into what's just happened. I'm telling Samuel that I couldn't get off the news yesterday because of what happened to Trump. What did Michel say to you about President Trump? Because Michel died in 2018, right?
Yes.
So Trump was in office in 16, wasn't he? 2016?
Yes. I went to visit Michel Desmarquet in March or April of 2018. That's the second time I met Michel Desmarquet. I actually brought with me a friend of mine from China and to visit him together. And then the television was showing like Trump giving a speech. And then Michel Desmarquet just suddenly, very, very kind of serious manner, just asked me, Samuel, what do you think about Trump? And then, at that time, Trump was a very, very controversial topic in the US and also elsewhere. People who loved him really loved him. People hated him, really hated him. So I didn't know where Michel Desmarquet was going. So I was kind of giving him like a very neutral answer. I said, I think Trump was doing his best. What do you think about him? And then Michel Desmarquet just said, I think he's going to get assassinated. I mean, I didn't ask him further because I didn't really want to get into that because I had more important things to ask him. But at that time, I thought he was comparing Trump to the likes of Dr. Martin Luther King or Gandhi, who were trying to make great changes in the world against the establishment. And sometimes this kind of people would not have a very favorable ending. So this is what I take. But afterwards, I asked him a different question. I said, you mentioned to me that there are 12 families deciding everything that happens on Earth. Who are the 12 families? Can you tell me who they are? and then he said, Tao didn't tell me that, but I know that the Catholic Church is one of them. So this is how I began to look to do more research on what's really going on behind the scenes, because in the U.S. people just look at what's happening on the stage, like the Republicans against Democrats, and in the UK the Labours against the Conservatives. Like people don't realize that there's a group of people, like people who call the deep state or other means, that are constantly in power, manipulating all the policies and kind of deciding on the real directions of the country or the policies. And I'm trying to get to the root of the problem. I'm trying to find out who those people are. And actually, after reading this book, the 334 Lies, I now have a basic hypothesis, or maybe like kind of like a theory of what's really going on behind everything.
Yes, well, we'll get into that book now. So it's very revealing. The thing that I see happening is when the lies are revealed, two things can happen. You can wake up and start to see life differently from a more spiritual perspective, or you can go into anger and feel victimized by the control drama that's on our planet. And what I see is a lot of people that say they have woken up, but they're in this victim consciousness and they're in the fight, like, oh, and that's not helping anybody. Like, okay, so we reveal that there are people controlling the planet that are trying to keep us dumbed down. I spoke to Dolly and Preston about this. We were talking about disclosure. And I was saying disclosure for me is more than just knowing that, we're not alone in the universe. It's also disclosing the corruption of what's happening on planet Earth and changing that, but also disclosing the amazing spiritual connection of who we are as humans and how powerful we are. Like that's what Christ says, you can do all that I have done and more. Even though he was a ninth category ET here on Earth, he was still telling humanity how powerful we are. So there's a lot of disclosure going on. What do you want to say about the disclosure of the deep state and what's in that book? Is it going to help humanity, or is it going to make us more frightened? What do you think?
I think the people who are enlightened are going to know the solution, which is actually pointed out in the book Thiaoouba Prophecy, which is to act together collectively through a concerted action, so that we can use nonviolent resistance to rise up against tyranny. So that's actually the best solution in the world. Nonviolent resistance is the key, because the world is controlled by a few families. That's being confirmed by my research. And actually, speaking of the families and secret societies, I have to say that it's been confirmed from my friends and personal friends, and also my research, that there are secret societies manipulating and kind of giving the directions to the different policies made by they actually influence the decisions of the politicians. And among the secret societies, there's one that people always talk about, which is the Illuminati. And this book, 334,000 Lies, talks about the experience of the author who was led into the secret society from a regular German college student to rising up to the ladder, becoming the chair or the highest degree member of the secret society. And the secret society has a lot of knowledge from the past, from the ancient civilizations. Remember, the book Thiaoouba Prophecy talks about the secret schools of ancient knowledge that they learned from the continent of Atlantis, and they passed on to certain people on Earth. And some of the secret societies have this knowledge, and high degree members, for example, of the book 334 Lies, they obtained such knowledge and practiced the psychic skills. They're able to have this kind of supernatural abilities to predict the future. This is why the Illuminati cards are so accurate in predicting, for example, 9/11, predicting the death of Princess Diana, predicting like the pandemic, and so they're able to use ancient form of astrology, a different form of astrology to predict what's going to happen in the future. And they also have a different kind of mentioned in the book at the end, like a tool to really see the images and what's going to happen in the future. So this is something that I really suggest people to look into that. But even though with the psychic abilities to influence the politicians in the world, they're afraid of one thing. They're afraid of the collective actions of the people. So no matter how strong their psychic abilities are, and how like how psychic how strong their psychic powers are, they're afraid of the people acting together, united together against their motto, which is divide and conquer. So they're afraid of the power of the people.
Yeah, go the power of the people. So, in your opinion, do you think that Trump is a part of that secret society, or do you think he's outside of it? Like he says, I'm going to drain the swamp. Like, is that a dog and pony show, or is that the truth?
I hope he is going to do what he's saying, and I'm inclined to believe that he is an honest person. But there are other people who provided me with evidence of the contrary. But I do, like, from my feeling, from my kind of what I heard from some of my friends, he is indeed like an honest person. But there are people who provided me with the evidence of I don't know, of the other side, or maybe showing otherwise. I don't know. It's a very controversial topic.
I don't think he's a saint, but I don't think he's the devil either. He's just a human that, that has a lot of human desires for fame and money and women, and also has been given a job to do, which is kind of interesting. Like, he's human and flawed. What about Robert F. Kennedy? Do you think he is actually inside an established political, family, but he appears to be on the outskirts, like many of his family have completely disowned him, running for the race as well? What do you think about that, Samuel?
I think Robert Kennedy is a very honest person for sure. And I'm hoping that he would be running against Trump. So no matter what happens, we're going to be heading into the right direction. So I really like him a lot. And I do think that he's getting a lot of things right, especially what happened in the last 4 or 5 years. And I do respect him quite a bit. Same respect that I have for Trump as well. And I do want people to realize that it's not Trump against Kennedy or other people. It's how to really realize what's happening behind the scenes. Yes.
Yeah, in Australia, it's mandatory. There's only they say 26, but I'm pretty sure it's more like 28, 29 million, because apparently we get at least 500,000 people that move to Australia each year from other places of the world. And they've been saying it's only 26 million people in Australia for years now. And I'm thinking, surely there's more than that now. But it's a very small population. It's mandatory. We have to vote. Otherwise, they fine us. But in the States, you don't have to vote. Like, what is it? 320 million Americans? How many Americans are there? You would know that more than me.
More than 300 million.
Yeah. But you guys don't have to vote. I can understand the logistics of that. Imagine counting all those votes. So, what do you think about the upcoming election? Like, do you think more people come out and vote, or it's not really a fair voice of the people if not everybody votes, really, is it?
I think seeing the assassination attempt on Trump, more and more people are going to vote. If no accidents happen, then I think it's very likely Trump is going to get reelected. But I do want to warn people, like inside the Illuminati or the secret society, they have a hierarchy structure in which the low degree members try to influence the low degree politicians. The middle degree members try to influence like mid-level politicians, and the high degree members having the strongest psychic abilities, they try to influence the top politicians like national leaders. So they're constantly trying to influence the behaviors of our leaders. So we have to keep that in mind. This is why I always want to shed light to the people that we have to know was really going on. Read the book of Dr. John Coleman, The Committee of 300, talking about the 300 people that kind of decide who would become the president candidates, who would become the Secretary of States of the United States, and so they're like a hidden hand trying to influence everything. And a lot of people don't know who they are. And if you do search on Google and type in the names of the high degree members of the Illuminati, you wouldn't be able to find anything, because they're never in public.
How do you think it helps people to actually know this knowledge? Do you think that revealing or disclosing this knowledge helps to eliminate it, or does it help to strengthen it? Like, what do you think?
I think we have to give the knowledge and also give the solution at the same time. The solution is to act together because they're afraid of the power of the people. And the most effective means of change everything is through concerted actions using nonviolent resistance. And I do know that people would think that the secret societies would be some kind of a conspiracy theory, but I want to share a personal story. A story which is real because it's a personal friend of mine who lives in the Bay Area. And he is the reader of Thiaoouba Prophecy. And after reading the book, he called me saying that, Samuel, this book is a very good book because, when I was young, I could levitate by fasting for a few days and running my energy from different chakras, like from the spine and rotating around in circles, and he was able to levitate. And he just a few months ago, he told me a personal encounter that happened in 2010. He got to know a very mysterious person through several connections, including the son of the king of gambling, like Stanley Ho. And this person drives a Rolls Royce in Hong Kong and telling him how the system works, mostly the financial system, speaking about how the supply of money works, not really by the doings of the central banks, but also through agents that they're able to kind of manipulate the monetary system. And then my friend, I cannot elaborate more because the things are, some of the information is confidential. My friend didn't believe it at all because he just thought that the money came from the central banks through through adjusting the different interest rates. And then that mysterious person, in order to convince my friend, took my friend to this VIP like service of HSBC. And then using my friend's name, opened a bank account, like a preferred customer, like VIP account for him, and then deposited $5 billion US into that account just to show him that they had the ability to do so. So my friend was shocked, and he asked that person, like, where did all this money came from? All this money come from? And then he was told that when people die, their money in the bank accounts that haven't been withdrawn. And then there are also occasions in which the checks are issued and the money were taken out from the bank accounts of the checks, but haven't been deposited yet. And then they're able to use this kind of floating money and take advantage of that and to use this money to for their own use. So it shows that this kind of people, there are people who have this kind of ability to do things that we cannot imagine, and they're also connected to a lot of the political leaders of different countries. My friend personally saw this group of people meeting with the Fed of New York, people like that. Yeah.
Did you say 5 billion or 5 million?
$5 billion US.
So he deposited it into his bank account and then he took it out again, right? But it could just be numbers on a page. I mean, smoke and mirrors, like, was it real money? I don't know. Does that
it's real money. It's real money just to show him they have the ability to do so. And then after my friend was convinced that the money was really in his account under his name, and then they reversed the transaction.
Drats. Couldn't they just leave a little bit of Oh my God. Well, we've only got 5 minutes to go until we stop the lives. Wow. Yeah, I could talk to you all day, Samuel. You're so fascinating. Like some of the stuff I wanted to ask you about China too. What do you think's happening in China? But I think we've run out of time. Anything that you'd like to leave people with? You said that you're coming down under in
Yes.
November.
Probably November, and I'm going to be meeting with Peter Desmarquet and also his friend Judith Collins in Sydney, and maybe I'm going to visit you as well.
Me too. Woo-hoo. So Peter Desmarquet is Michel's son.
Yes.
Who he's obviously on board with the messages from the book, because I think Michel said that his family had disowned him when he tried to spread the messages. But Peter, who's in his 50s or 60s now, he's obviously on board with the messages. He's
on board. His sister is not on board. His mother is not on board, but he is, fortunately. And he actually remembered what happened back then when Michel was gone for 10 days.
Yeah. So, he was abducted, as we said, abduction to the ninth planet for 10 days. But he was given a telepathic communication to leave a note for his family saying, I'm just going away for 10 days. I'll be back. So they wouldn't call the police and say he's missing, because there was a note. I'm just going to go visit another planet. I'll be back. What did the note say? Do you remember?
Saying that I would be gone for 10 days and there's absolutely no need to worry about me.
Okay, So they did. When they abducted him, they left that for his family. So Peter remembers him disappearing for 10 days when he was a child. He must have been a child when that happened. Well, hang on, 80s. No, he would have been. If he's in his 50s or 60s, he would have been a young adult. But he remembers that.
Young adults, yes.
Yeah.
There are also a lot of things I want to cover maybe next time, including the exact date of the birth of Jesus, because Chinese historians kept a very good and accurate astronomical record. I was able to pinpoint the exact date of the birth of Jesus from Virgin Mary, and also the Christ who came out of nowhere in the desert, because like an astrologer just read like a birth chart given to him by a very mysterious caller, saying that he got the birth date and time from the Vatican records, and it turns out that the birth chart shows like a perfect figure, like a perfect like saint-like human being. So that's very interesting.
So the exact date of the birth of the baby Jesus, not the manufacturing of the body of the alien Jesus that was the Christ. So what was that? You have both. Well, what was that exact date? It's obviously not the 25th of December.
So the exact date is actually March 9th, 5 BC.
Wow.
That's the birth of Jesus, March 9th.
Wow.
And the appearance of Christ is actually March 28th, AD 28 at 5:40 a.m.
Wow. So it's interesting. I was thinking this the other day. We're running out of time, 3 minutes to go, that our whole calendar all across the world is based on this birth of Jesus thing. Like we're in the year 2024 because it was supposedly 2024 years since the birth of Jesus. So that has impacted the whole world. Like that's the whole world. Like everyone's running on this calendar, which is really interesting. Oh my God, it's so fascinating talking to you, Samuel. Tell people where they can find you if they want to download the book. I actually downloaded the PDF. You can find it online for free. But if you do buy the book, I think it's still on Amazon, isn't it? Peter Desmarquet gets the money from any purchases of the book, right? That's Michel's son. Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's right. And people can search the book on Amazon, get the book on Amazon, Thiaoouba Prophecy, Thiaoouba. And people can also get the audio book on audible.com. It's read by a British person, narrator, a very good audiobook too. And,
there you go. Nice.
Yes. And also
we've got 1 minute to go, or actually 30 seconds. What did you want to say? Because we've got to go.
One final word. If you do encounter challenges, look inside for answers, because the kingdom of God is within you.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Big love for the work you're doing, and the guides and Michelle and all the team in Spirit are so in homage to you for all the work that you're doing in spreading the messages. Thank you again. And thanks everyone for listening. If you want to contact me, go to karenswain.com and send me an email and let me know what you're thinking about the shows. Love to hear from you if you're not listening on YouTube or Facebook or X or Rumble or any of the platforms. Thanks again. Big love, Samuel. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
You got to accentuate the positive. I feel good. A little bit of feel good goes a long way.
You're listening to Karen Swain, teacher of deliberate creation, accentuating the positive, showing you a way to a better life.
Accentuating the positive, it's not just fad, it's sanity. Who in their right mind would accentuate anything else?
Clap along if you feel like that's what you want.